Whenever you hear from somebody who's learned a language, they always tell you three things. But there's actually a secret fourth thing that ties together the other three things and actually makes learning a language possible. For without it, the road to failure is almost certain. The very first thing that people tell you to do is to consume comprehensible input, or material that is slightly above your skill level. It will be challenging enough to where you're not exactly comfortable, which is a good thing because that means you're learning. But at the same time, it's not too challenging to the point where you become overwhelmed, at which point you essentially learn nothing. For example, if you are a beginner, if you just are getting started learning a language, you would not want to jump into podcasts right away because it's going to be too hard. You're not going to be able to understand them at all. You won't learn a whole lot. Instead, what I would recommend is to memorize some very basic but essential words. On the other hand, if you are an advanced learner, you would never ever use flashcards to memorize individual words. You would listen to a podcast or read a book. In terms of learning a language, this is about the most practical advice you can give someone. The second phrase you hear quite frequently is study every day. This isn't essential, but it will speed up your language learning journey immensely, as previous studies have shown that working on a skill daily, rather than once every 2 days or 3 days or weekly, will increase the rate at which you learn that skill, even if it's for the same amount of time in total. And when I say study, I mean immersion, like talking to a native, practicing with flashcards, practicing your listening, practicing your speaking. When you study, study hard. You want to make the most out of your time since it is a fleeting resource. The last tip isn't super common, but you do hear it occasionally, which is to remember your why. Without a reason to learn your language, it becomes a lot more difficult to follow through with your commitment, unless you just naturally enjoy learning languages, of course. If you have a reason to learn a language, whether it be for career advancement or a vacation that you have coming up, or just to be able to see the world from a different point of view, it will always be easier to learn your target language if you keep these reasons at the forefront of your journey. For example, in 10 months, I will be in Brazil. If I want to have a good time, I better know Portuguese. I don't really have a choice but to study and get quite conversational by then. If not, it's not gonna be fun. Now, in order to make all of these things work, I believe it is essential to play the long game. The fourth thing that language learners forget to tell you is that learning a language takes a long time because it is inherently difficult. This seems like common sense, but it's honestly pretty easy to forget. Without remembering this, it's really easy to see minimal progress or to see your goals so far out of reach that you run out of motivation and just give up. However, if you make this a goal for yourself on the scale of years, it will be significantly easier to give yourself grace when you don't see progress come quickly. And in my experience, it is a lot like working out. If you have a goal in mind, whether it's a good physique or a particular weight that you want to lift, or you just think the scale spits out numbers that are too high, you have to be willing to be patient to see results. Not once in the history of ever has somebody went to the gym for 2 weeks and lost 15 pounds or increased their squat max by 60 pounds. It doesn't happen. Things like this take time to see results. And if you think that the same applies to language learning, I highly encourage you to reframe your thinking. Just as you can't do the things in the gym that I mentioned earlier in 2 weeks, you can't learn a language in a month. Only under very extreme circumstances can somebody learn a language in a month, whether it be the languages are closely related, or they just travel to the place that speaks the language, or they are just really smart and learn things very quickly, or a combination of the three. I've never seen that happen. If you think you can, I regret to inform you, but you will probably be pretty frustrated by the time that the end of the month rolls around. And at that point, the chances of you sticking with your language are less than ideal. However, if you give yourself 1 to 5 years, depending on which language you know and which language you want to learn, it is far more likely to maintain motivation and actually stick with your studies until you reach your goal. Learning a language is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And if you think it is, then I think you're in the wrong race. I hope this helped. Hope you learned something. Have a great day. Ciao.